there's a developing issue which we need to bring to your attention. In fact, the Ministry of Education, as we understand, is reacting to the directive by Prinkoff. Prinkoff earlier indicated that it was directing all teacher trainees across the country to feed themselves on campus. But the Minister for Education, Dr. Educhum, as we understand, is addressing a press conference live, and we'll be taking you there shortly to bring you the very latest.
Thank you, PRO, and our distinguished media personnel who are here. I'm very happy today to inform you that government has released 67,942,652 cedis to colleges of education. I know you may have read the media reports. There were many calls on us to respond to concerns of Prinkoff, and we wanted to take advantage of your presence here to let the country know that the President of the Republic, the Finance Minister, and all those who have worked hard to ensure that various promises made to colleges of education are carried through, has once again delivered on their promise. And that is why this amount has been released to colleges of education. Thank you so much for actually coming here on a very short notice so that we can address this important issue for our nation. All right? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Well, so the confirmation is out there. Government has just confirmed that it has settled the amount that's needed to feed all teacher trainees across the country, which will therefore mean that that directive earlier indicated and issued by Prinkoff will not stand, given the fact that government is releasing funds to feed all teacher trainees across the colleges of education. But is that really the case? And perhaps why is government delaying, or why has there been a huge delay in terms of the release of the funds? Let's find out more. Many reactions have been greeting this. In fact, the Teacher Trainees Association of Ghana have reacted to it. Prinkoff itself has concerns about the way government is handling this matter. Let's get all of those reactions for you. Jonathan Junu is the president for TTAC. He's joining us live now on Zoom. And we also have the National Conference of Principals of Colleges of Education, Prinkoff. Their executives will be speaking to us shortly. But let me start off with you, Jonathan, if you're on with us. Now there's a confirmation from the Ministry of Education that at least the funds have been released. Are you happy about this development?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to you and your viewers. And good afternoon to teacher trainees across the 46 public colleges of education. Yes, just as the minister has mentioned, we are only hoping that payment will be done. First of all, I want to thank them very much that moves have been made to release funds and then pay the allowance of teacher trainees and then giving the feeding component to the principals. So we thank the government very much, but we are expecting that the disbursement will be done as early as possible so that teacher trainees can equally receive their allowance.
Initially, how bad was the situation? I mean, prior to this announcement that we are getting from the education minister?
Yes, it was a very terrible situation, as I keep saying every day. Some students would have to borrow money on campus. Some up to now have not been able to access their results because they couldn't pay their examination fee. So it is a terrible situation until now.
Okay, so ever since the last time we engaged, and the last time we engaged, I quite recall that you were talking about arrears, the teacher training arrears topping some 7 months. Understand that's what you were telling me. That's right. That's correct?
Yes.
7 months.
Yes.
So do you know for a fact if for now government is releasing all that tranche to you, or perhaps the payments will be made in installments? Have you engaged government on that?
Well, our last engagement was with GTEC. And they gave us the assurance that the monies will be paid and arrears will be cleared. And if possible, the 2021-2022 academic year arrears will also be cleared. So that is what we are hoping for, that government, as a matter of agency release the money and then pay the teacher trainees.
Yes. So what you're asking for is the full payment to be made. You wouldn't tolerate if that is being done in installments. At least if you have that for this month, will that suffice?
You see, the issue is that if the money is paid in installment, we will go around and come back and be having the same discussion again. That is our problem. If the money is paid in installment, we will go back, come to this same spot and be having the same conversation. So we are hoping and pleading that the money should be paid in full.
Just hold on for me, Jonathan. Let's hear from Dr. Emmanuel Nyamiche. He's the national president of PRINCOF. In fact, they issued the directive since morning, which is necessitating the reaction from government now as to the fact that many of your colleagues there have to find a way of feeding yourselves on campus. But Jonathan, just before we hear from Doc, this is one thing that you need to paint a picture for us on. The concern out there is that there are some variations even in the teacher training allowances that you're being given now. Are the terms different from what it used to be?
No, the amount you receive is the same as it used to be. The only difference here in payment is that the level hundreds, when payments is being affected, the level hundreds, they will only receive 3 months. That's level 100. They will only receive 3 months. But the level 200, 300, and 400s, they would have to be paid for the 7 months. That's the only variation.
We're not too clear with that. So what you mean is those are the lower levels will not have the same amounts as compared to those of you who are in your final year?
Yes. That's the level 100s because they just came to school. Yes.
Okay, so what we also understand is that you're writing exams now, and that's why you're in very dire needs of the funds. How are you coping now that, I mean, as we await the funds, now that we know that at least it's on its way? It never used to be the case, but how are you making up for that shortfall, the fact that most of you are writing your exams?
It has not been easy for us. It has not been easy for us as students because even books to buy, handout to buy to study has become a problem for us. Like I mentioned, some students would have to go and borrow money. If you speak to some of the principals, they will tell you that the students sometimes come to them to borrow money to buy books and even feed themselves. So you see that it was a very terrible situation. Very, very terrible.
Interesting.
The trainees have suffered. They've suffered.
Right. And this is also happening at a time when the non-teaching staff had declared a strike. Are they back to their normal service? I mean, this is just a time when we also understand they are negotiating with government over their concerns. So it's as though the situation is not too clear right now what the future holds for many of you.
During our last engagement with GTech, we had a letter from Sensac where they suspended their strike. So during our engagement, we were assured that they won't be going back to the strike again. That's the assurance we had from GTech, that discussions were going to take place to make sure that their issues are attended to so that they will remain at post. So we are holding on to those ways.
Okay, let's see about that. Just hold on for us, Jonathan. Larry K. Agbado is also editor of Colleges of Education Weekly Journal. Larry, what reports, first of all, are you getting from across the campuses on what exactly the true situation is? Are students leaving campus? Is that the case?
All right, so currently, good afternoon to you, Blessed, and then good afternoon to your viewers across the country. Currently, students are not leaving campus. Students are all stationed on campus now. I think most of them got to hear about the news here this morning that from the 8th of May, they are supposed to leave their booths to start feeding themselves. And it's coming to some of them as a surprise because, as Jonathan said, these are students who are not financially sound at the moment they find themselves. The level 100s just left their various campuses. That was last week. They have ended a full semester. So they are home currently. I think we currently have level 300 or so on campus now. Another batch will be joining them this week. So the situation on campus is quite calm for now. I think the news coming in from the Ministry of Education, the press conference that was addressed by the Honorable Minister, is quite refreshing. I think this should be a relief for the principals. This is something they have been holding for a very long while now. They just didn't know how to voice it out or how to bring it out until that statement was issued by the executive secretary of Prinkov. Uh, as to how this can be sustained, as to how the payment of this allowance will continue for the years to come, it's a topic for another day. But I think the earlier we get to accept the reality that, look, we are finally getting to that age or that time where we probably have to say goodbye to the payment of the trainee teachers allowance and open the colleges, use such resources to develop the colleges with infrastructure, open the colleges to operate, admit more students. Then I think, because for how long are we going to continue this? So if Prinkov had not come out with this statement to express the situation in the colleges, it means that they will have just kept quiet and kept suffering. The colleges currently, their number one problem is not the payment of trainee teachers allowance. I know Jonathan and his group will not take it lightly with me for this,
Right,
but
yes. Most likely.
the number one problem in the colleges right now has to do with infrastructure. And I can't blame government for this, because if you look at the money government is paying for trainee teachers allowance, as a father, if you are pushing such money into the payment of trainee allowance, it will be unwise to push other resources into their infrastructure, because there are other sectors they need to look into. So for me, the development of the colleges of education currently lies in the hands of the trainee teachers and Prinkov. They need to come out and say, look, you fed us enough. It's time we replace the allowance with something else. If they have to resort to just clean them, or they all resort back to the days of just the student loan from the student loan trust fund, so that at least we can look. It's time we separate politics from our educational life, and as a country, that is the best way.
So you feel this is more about politics, but let's see what TTAG thinks about this, Jonathan, and that has been the concern of some experts as well. They believe that, I mean, critically assessing the situation, this is the time to scrap the teacher trainee allowances. What's the position of TTAG on that? What's the position of your association on that, Jonathan? Jonathan, you'd have to unmute for us. We want to understand what you think about this, and that's the opinion one of your colleagues has shared, that the fact that we need to scrap the teacher trainee allowances.
This is a
Jonathan, kindly unmute so we can hear you.
Why? The question is, why should the allowance be cancelled? Why should the allowance be cancelled? Look, there are good reasons why this allowance should be maintained. There are good reasons. So if he is pinching his argument around the fact that there are infrastructure deficits, so allowance should be cancelled, we disagree. We equally have reasons why we think that allowance should be maintained, and we strongly believe it's for that reason that is why the allowance was installed when it was cancelled. We have teacher knowledge hub of we model how we want the country to be. We shape the future, the growth and development of this country. So any government that thinks about the future of this country should see to it that during the training process of the teachers, certain cushioning is given to them, and the allowance is one. Look, we don't have control over our posting. After graduating, we are posted to places where we don't have control over. We go there, the conditions are not good, but we stay there and work for the betterment of the country with no allowance. But we are okay. So government feel that yes, Something should be training. You understand?
Right.
And also put this forward. Any challenge that comes with education in this country, the first people that are hit hard, that feel the heat, are the teachers.
But at least for now,
Infrastructure
you're just trainees. I guess you're just trainees. You're now learning. So that has been the concern.
Yes,
How about opening
yes,
up, allowing the
yes.
system to run?
We are just learning. We are learning to go there and face the challenges. So government should feel that, okay, let me give you that cushioning. And that is what government is doing. So if you are saying you want to cancel it, we don't agree. Teacher trainees will not agree.
Okay. Just hold on for me, Jonathan.
If not, teacher trainees will suffer.
Okay, we'll delve deeper into that matter, but fortunately, Dr. Emmanuel Nyamiche is joining us. He is National President of PRINCOF. So, Doc, here we are. Government has just announced that they'll be releasing the funds needed for issues of, feeding on campus. Is that a good development for you? Hello, Doc.
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, so good news, isn't it? Government says
very good news, and that has been the expectation. And so we are very excited about it.
Are you now clear on what has been accounting for the delays in payments?
Well, I can't put a finger on anything, honestly, because I'm not privy to what the challenges could have been.
So do we have clarity now as to what tranche should be paid to you in terms of the arrears that's been owed?
We don't have any timelines. We don't have any indication yet. But the good thing about all of this is that we would receive some money. And once we get that, we would quickly sort out our suppliers, and then they would continue to supply us with the food items that we need.
And I guess it's not as though the funds would hit your accounts immediately, so which would mean that there's a need for some interim measures. Having consulted with your colleagues, what are you going to do in the interim as you await the funds to arrive?
Yes, sorry about that, the interruptions. We have always done this with our suppliers. The rapport is there, we talk to them, and once they even know, they have the indication, they are convinced that some money would be given very soon, they would continue to give us the food items that we asking for. The problem has been that they are not sure when they would be paid. And once that assurance is not given, then they are reluctant to supply. But once they have heard from officialdom, credible sources, that the money would come, why not? We can talk, and then they will begin to give us the food items that we need.
Your initial directive was questioned by some parents as well, the initial demand on trainees to find their own means of feeding. What informed that decision, really?
What informed this is that we didn't want a situation where our students would have to go home. We want to, as much as possible, keep our students on campus. So once we have this understanding, we reach this understanding that they would fend for themselves, stay on campus, go through their academic work. Anytime the money is paid, we refund same to them. Then we don't disrupt the academic calendar. That was our worst fear, a disruption in the academic calendar, because it's already very tight. And for the first time, we're going to do up to 23rd December. And so you can imagine what would happen if we lose 1 week out of that. It's going to seriously affect us. And we don't want to go into 2023.
But all of this was happening at a time when teacher trainee allowances were not paid for close to 7 months. So that was going to be a very difficult time for students.
What has aggravated the situation is the fact that prices of food items in the market have gone up in all the food items. And so the suppliers want to increase the amounts involved. And we cannot allow that because we haven't had a raise in the minimum daily amounts that are given to us to feed the students. So once we allow that, it's going to have dire consequences on us. That is where, otherwise, if the market prices remain stable, the suppliers would understand that the money will be paid because they have always waited. But this time they are feeling very reluctant because they want to increase. We don't want them to increase. And so we are where we are because of what is happening worldwide in as far as trends in the market are concerned.
All right, then. I'm grateful, Dr. Emmanuel Nyamiche. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's wrap up on this conversation. Jonathan, so there's a way forward now. What's your expectation as activities return to normal? Jonathan, there's some normalcy that we're expecting. At least, what's your expectation going forward? Yes, Jonathan, if you can hear me, I'm asking about your expectations going forward. It appears that we're having some challenges then, but thank you, gentlemen, for your time. This is still The Pulse. When we return, we'll bring you some more stories.